Welcome to episode 710 of Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, again here with Jen, the Arcane Observer, the co-host of this podcast. And we're talking about haunted libraries again. This is part two of this look into this topic. So thank you all for being here. And as always, please check out all the links in the episode descriptions for all the articles that I'm referring to here and there in these shows, and also links to Jen's channel and also the whole Trouble Minds Network, all those things. I really appreciate being part of that. So, and I think that's it. So we can get back into the show here. Jen, whenever you're ready, welcome back into the show.
Hello. Happy birthday again, James. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. I'm glad that you're here, and I think next time we have to, or one of these times soon, we have to. Yeah, it'll be your turn. We have to pick something you want to talk about again, because last time we did mimics, and that was a lot of fun. So, but yeah, the libraries. The other thing I wanted to talk about here, this isn't so much from an article, but just something I've been wondering about. When it comes to books, and especially books that really gained a following, authors and everything else like that, and people through the years and decades would read the same book, and even the same physical copy of a book. I wonder if that does also leave energy and can lead to some sort of residual or random events that is caused by the energy or the emotions of the people that have picked up those books and held those books and read them, and then maybe even multiple times. Who knows? I know I've definitely reread some books over the years, back when I could read books in print, and I can only imagine library books, how many people that actually check out any given book, and how often it is read, and how much energy is sort of put out by reading a book over and over again over time.
Oh yeah, when I find a book that I really like, sometimes I'll read it more than once, and there's some books I've read, 3 or 4 times sometimes. Just kind of fun to revisit them. And then just the medium itself of books, the way that the transference of ideas and energy and everything, the way that people picture and imagine the scenes in their mind and the emotions that they feel while they're reading the book and imagining the characters and what they're going through. There must be some kind of an energy to the books themselves. I think there's kind of an idea about that in the main zeitgeist, so to speak, about books anyway, having a type of power like that. Hold on, can you hear those dogs freaking out? They're barking at
Just
something.
just barely.
Okay.
But you're welcome to step back in for a minute if you need to, and we can get back to you whenever you're ready. So, but yeah, I think that's a major part of it as far as books go. And you think of books that are just filled, or books that are just filled with libraries. Libraries are just filled with books. There we go. Words are hard. And again, each book could have been read by who knows how many people. And I mean, yes, eventually they do start to break down if they're read enough, and of course, if they're mishandled enough, then either accidentally or just intentionally or whatever. But yeah, I do think energy can be sort of put into and kept by these books, and maybe even in some cases, I wonder if that can be, I don't know, triggered by similar emotions or other people going through the same kind of things, or reading a book similar to that. I wonder how much of that is all connected. Also, with that, when it comes to the libraries, I know many of them have local newspapers, or at least some do, have local newspapers from years and years ago. And I mean, that all right there is history in and of itself in a way as well. So I wonder if that same thing can be said for newspapers, and or even just some libraries will have just small collections of items that were important to the local area, to the history. And I can imagine those also having some energy and causing some things. And that's not even counting whatever else, like we talked about in the first show, whatever else may have happened to the building before or when it was a library. That little library I mentioned in the first episode of this 2-part series here, I did hear years later that there was a fire in the library. I didn't hear the details, so I don't know any of the details of where and what it hit, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was it at least visited that one little room in that downstairs, because as we talked about in the first episode with darkness and darkened rooms and corners, yeah, you don't always get that weird feeling of being watched or feeling a presence from every single dark corner of a place usually. So there has to be, to me anyway, there has to be something more to it than just it being dark. And I really wonder too if the librarians ever felt anything when they used that elevator to go up and down through that area, or if they didn't. And of course, I wouldn't never really ask them, because again, not everyone is into talking about these things the way that we and some others are. So, yeah, whenever you're ready, Jen, thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard to introduce that kind of conversation. It's always, if it's not the right person, it's kind of awkward. So you have to kind of judge the character before you can ask questions like that, unless you're there specifically to do it. I've been there, when trying to talk to people who may have had experiences, or you think that there's something with the building or the house or something like that, but you can't really approach it, just openly, I guess. But the historical archives aspect, like the housing of print, of any type of journalist print, or then just the books themselves. The idea again about the way that these books go through so many different people's houses and so many different people's hands, and then the way that books can be viewed as a type of, almost like a type of, not escapism, but it's as if you are going into like this sort of like inner sort of vision of, it's like watching a movie in your mind or something. But then the way that people kind of use books in that way, so the medium itself being something that could be absorbing the person who's reading it as well, makes a lot of sense. And there's another aspect about it that I thought would be interesting to bring up, is there's like a bibliomancy. It's basically where you like pick up a book, and I've done it. It's very interesting. It doesn't always make sense, but sometimes, you pick up a particular type of book, maybe a dictionary, a thesaurus. I had a thesaurus. I can't say it. A thesaurus. Anyway, so having a big book like that, or an encyclopedia, or some kind of book where you just flip through it and you open randomly to, typically just like a short phrase or a particular word. And then you kind of flip through the rest of the book into another page randomly. You kind of just open up randomly throughout the book. And people report feeling as if they might be receiving information that way of some kind. Like there's some type of way that the book is being used as a tool, a type of mediumship. And so I think that just the whole mystique about books themselves being some type of a power center, or having some type of think about the Bible, or think about very popular books, as you were mentioning. And maybe the way that those have had such a huge, massive impact. And I wouldn't be surprised if they would be what you would call haunted, but not really the way that people might be thinking of them as being haunted, but that they have some type of power to them. And then just seeing the history of the book remember in the old books, they had that library card in it. You could see like all the people who had checked it out before. It's just very interesting, just about how the book could be a sort of almost like a talisman of information from the individuals who had read it. And then the typography of these books, the type of information that some particular books might draw certain types of individuals. I remember when I was really interested in the esoteric and things like that, those books were almost always gone. And inevitably, the best ones, somebody had stolen it, or something. So, yeah, libraries are just a really neat place for, I think, could have very unusual energy. And then, yeah, that's what I kind of think about it, too.
Yeah, definitely. And I have one article here. It doesn't just cover places in the U.S., but there's I just found an article here about a library in the UK, in England. It's let me see here. This is the library at Combermere Abbey, near Cheshire, England. I apologize if I'm not saying any of that correctly. But there's a spirit that's rumored to be, and of course it goes to a pop-up ad real quick. Let me just get out of this. Let's see here, because of course I would do that right in the middle of the show. But it is possibly the lord of the area, Lord Combermere himself, who passed away in 1891, and apparently after members of the Abbey staff reported possible sightings there, a photographer found set up a camera there at the library, and the apparently they caught some things there. So that's just one example, but I'm sure there's places all around the world, in different libraries around the world, just as I think there's really activity of all different kinds everywhere that have these places, and especially, my gosh, if you think of some of the more ancient buildings around the world that were libraries, even if they're not now, if they're sort of in ruins or whatever, or they're sort of slowly falling apart, there could still be similar kinds of things going on there as well. So
Yeah, there was this really cool movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called The Ninth Gate. Have you ever heard of that movie?
I've heard of it. I tried to. I got it from the library once, ironically enough, but it was on DVD and it would not work. So, but yeah, I'm curious to hear what that's about.
I've watched that movie, I don't know, a long time ago. I watched it like countless times. Like I think I rented it and just, how you watch a movie over and over again because you've rented it, that sort of thing. And that the whole movie premise is that there's a book dealer and he gets a hold of, he finds books for people basically. And he had a client that was wanting this particular book, and the book was like supposed to have been written by the devil or something. And it's sought after by these, historical sort of, occult family lines that are really, they're trying to find this book. And there were several copies that were made and they were distributed. There's like 3 or 4 different copies, and they all have different parts of the book that are not in another part of the book and that sort of thing. And on his search for finding this book, he basically comes into contact with all these different characters that are book connoisseurs, and they have the ones who have collected the other copies. So he's trying to see like if the copy of his client is an accurate copy or if it's a forgery of some kind. It leads them into this whole thing that the book is a type of ritual that opens up one of the gates to I don't know if you'd say hell, but that's kind of the premise in the movie. It's not a horror movie. It's just kind of this. It's almost like a mystery clue type movie. Really, it's pretty good. But the power of the book and that concept, and in that movie, some of these libraries are archived with some of the most ancient texts, and you can think about the Vatican archives as being a very similar scenario where you have, on a much bigger scale, on a much more elaborate, incredible scale. But much like that, how you have, I can't even imagine what kind of power or energy would be in the Vatican archives. They have texts from the Maya period. They have texts from all over the world. Some of them can't even be exposed to oxygen. It's really incredible. So it's I don't know. I think that on a lighter note, there's must be something to just the typical, maybe not every public library, but there could be some kind of, you never know. There's such complicated, I don't know, things playing into it, whether or not it's the building, or if it's some of the texts in the building itself, or the people that are in there. There's so many different things probably at work when people do have these experiences, particularly in libraries. So I think it's just a really neat topic.
Yeah, especially when you think about places that are not open 24/7, and don't have people in the building, even employees in the building 24/7. I mean, I can imagine that would be a good time for spirits or other entities being there to just be out and about and doing whatever they want. There could be activity in libraries that no one even hears about, because whoever's there is used to and aware enough of schedules and what happens there that they're able to just sort of relax. And you do hear about that in places where there's hardly ever any reports of anything weird going on, but then one person visits a place at an unusual time, and they have one experience, and that's the only experience you hear about in the location. And then that has always made me wonder, is that because usually whoever's there is aware that there's hardly ever going to be anyone in the location at the time. So I don't think everywhere has to be have activity, has to be haunted, but I do think there's probably a lot more places that do have presences there than maybe we are aware of because we're not there all the time, and or they just choose not to make themselves known so much in that way. So I did find a library here in over in Australia, actually, and I'm probably going to say the name wrong of this part of the country there, Melbourne, Australia. It's the state library there. Let me see here. So yeah, it's the state library of Victoria. I'm sorry. So it's the state library of Victoria in Australia, and apparently there's said to be multiple spirits there. There's a poltergeist that likes to move things around. So who knows if that is a sentient being or if it's just, again, energy causing things to happen. But there's also apparitions seen there of former librarians as well. I've heard that in a couple of cases where people that have spent so much time either working or just visiting a location in life, they will continue to visit that location after they passed. And of course, it could be residual as well. But I always wonder if in some cases it really is that person and their idea of a good afterlife or positive afterlife is being in one of these kinds of locations that they really loved in life.
Yeah, and I wonder about as we go into the more modern, the modern age, and as we're moving forward, and people are kind of drifting away. I've heard that book reading has had like a revival. That some people like are coming up and they want to hold a book in their hands. The Kindle is still very popular. The just reading PDFs and so on and so forth. But there's something interesting about like even if you just come across a text that you want to read, whether a book or a nonfiction, and you're reading it on your computer or your device or whatever, and you can kind of feel. I mean, a lot of the books I find on like Internet Archives or other sites like that, they're literally just scanned in. So that's what it is. Also with like the Vatican archives, it's all scanned in. So you have and people are working on that. There are still books that have not been scanned in. You can look at a lot of texts on the Vatican website that they have in their archives. But then just thinking about while you're reading that, I mean, you can kind of feel it changing the mindscape as you're reading it. And it begins to kind of affect the way that you're looking at the world around you for maybe that day or a couple of days or however long it lasts. Like when you have a really powerful dream and it sort of impacts you for a couple of days or maybe just for a couple of hours and you move on with your life. But there's something about that. So in the concept of like a haunted library, it could be a combination of the text itself and the information in the text. But it could also be the people, the book as a sort of, like I say, like a Horcrux or something. The kind of context of like it having passed through so many different homes and been checked out over and over again by particular individuals. And so it becomes like almost like a haunted object. So how many of them are in there in a library situation? And then I wonder too about the difference between going into a time where the books they have to continue to keep an archive of these books. Because I can't imagine a time where there is no print copy available of some of these books,
Right. Yeah. I do wonder too with the books and everything, and the energy that it goes into. Cause I mentioned this before on other shows. There are some times when I write here and there. I've been writing since I was a kid, and every once in a while I'll be working on a scene where it just comes to my mind before I'm even putting anything down, before I'm even typing anything. and I can see any given part of a scene when it's really coming to me well, or when I really am enjoying it. And so, if that's happening to the writers when they're making their books, then I don't see why that couldn't happen to people when they're reading a book. They couldn't really get into a scene, and then I think books can be some kind of a a mind portal, or a way to change the mind, which could be said in a way to be a portal to their imaginations, and to possibly just, I don't know, other levels of consciousness where they can imagine these things being real, even if they're not happening right here. I can imagine that, and I still wonder about that too with fiction. I have this idea that all fiction is reality somewhere. Maybe not here in this universe, but probably somewhere else, some other universe, some other level of reality. And not to say that we don't have imagination and we can't come up with ideas on our own. Just that I think we see into other places a lot more than maybe we might realize at times.
Yeah, I've heard of authors saying that they feel like they are channeling the stories. Stephen King has said that he got it from dreams, and there have been other authors too that report that the information comes in and they just kind of put it down. They're basically just channeling the information through, as if they're picking up on something that has happened or might be happening, but it could go either way. But I think that there's definitely something about the book as a type of medium. The use of language itself, transcribed through writing, alphabet systems and symbols like that. The letter is just a symbol of communication. So I think that it's a medium of some kind when you put it into a text, where it has a conglomeration of information, trying to motivate the reader to understand something. So I think that the book itself, the books themselves in libraries, surely they have some kind of impact and do maybe create an active atmosphere in libraries. It could be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I remember reading that also about or hearing that also about H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, as maybe the way to put it would be as messed up as he was in his own way with some of his views on basically racism and all that. Putting that aside, he did say that he got a lot of his ideas for his writing, basically that all came from dreams, and that even what he wrote, even the stories he made from that, don't really come close to what he actually experienced in his dreams. So that is definitely a possibility there as well. That that interaction between someone in the past and someone present looking into and reading material could cause that maybe some weird things happen in libraries. So we are just about out of time, but yeah, I'm glad that we were able to cover this topic. I think we could probably go on about it for a while, but we will definitely be doing this again, as we always do whenever possible. And yeah, Jen, thank you for being here with me, and especially on this night, on my birthday and everything. And yeah, I'll let you go for now, and we can talk next time.
Thank you, James, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here and listening. I will be putting these couple of shows out here in a couple of days here, as I usually do. And yeah, so next episodes after these will be True Paranormal Stories from the Web. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Once I can find there we go, the stop record button. Everyone take care.